You're watching Man Coverage with Nate Schmidt and James Bonneville on National Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate, James Bonneville, and Steve Bellisari, the quarterback. We are here. It is October 13th, 2024. Not going to lie, I feel like someone shot me after the end of that game, but I'm still here nonetheless, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. We've got Mark GIVLER with us today from Buckeye Huddle. We're going to bring on in just one moment. And we're gonna break down this game, number 2 versus number 3, from beginning to end. Before we bring in the guru, I want to get everybody's thoughts on the game. Steve, I want to go with you first. You played quarterback at Ohio State. I think the guy that played last night did a pretty good job. Honestly, I was impressed with Will Howard, considering he had people running in his face. The offensive line obviously lost 2 starters, and there was some guys coming after him. But all in all, I thought that Will Howard did a pretty good job until that last play. Steve, give me your thoughts on how you thought Howard played as a whole for the entire game, and what the F was he doing at the end there?
Great. To be honest, there's not a lot I would change about his game, right? I mean, I think he was put in some tough spots. He got new guys on the line, and he did his job, right? He put us in a position to win the game. Unfortunately, I hate that it'll be looked at that he was the one on that last play. That wasn't his fault. No. He was put in a no-win situation. We got gamed, right? They outsmarted us out the end there by throwing the 12th guy on the field. We don't win prizes for having a timeout at the end of the game. We should have used it, right? The second we got confused, didn't know what was going on, we got the timeout. We lost 8 to 10 seconds, which is 2 plays to where we could get a play off in the middle of the field, spike it, and then line up for a kickoff from a field goal. So I hate that it happened that way. But Will Howard, that's why we had him come to this school and play in big games and play like that. He played outstanding. Could I be nitpicky and say, man, maybe some of his deep balls could have been better here and there? Sure, you could say that about every quarterback, every game, but his decision-making, his thought process, he was spot on. And unfortunately, he got put in a no-win situation that last play of the game, which is, that's tough.
I agree. James, I want to get your thoughts on how this defense played. This defense has been pretty solid. They haven't really been tested, but they look good against Iowa. Last night, it didn't go well, especially in the secondary. You know a lot about Denzel Burke, and we've been pretty, complimentary of him over the years. But yesterday, he looked like a burnt marshmallow when you were, trying to make some s'mores and you left your shit in there too long and it catches on fire. That's kind of what he looked like all night long. What did you think about the defense, and what was wrong with the secondary yesterday, bud?
Well, I mean, first off, let's be honest. Evan Stewart is a hell of a receiver. We talked about him when he was coming out of high school, when he committed to A&M, as I thought him as really being one of those future stars. And I don't think he had a chance to show himself at A&M, but last night he introduced himself to the world. And I think people realize this kid's got, it not only his size and speed, but his strength. There was that one play where he felt like he was dragging Burke around like all over the place. The one thing that kind of shocked me was whenever Ohio State was running zone, they did a really good job of putting it in between, but separating the safeties and the corners or linebackers. And there was this big in between. They were running these skinny posts to constantly. I think that is something. I mean, granted, you got guys like Tez Johnson who can really spread the field. You got to come back and play that. But I think that's something they're going to have to realize when they're playing again, because let's be honest, they're going to play again, either the Big Ten championship or probably in the tournament. I mean, I know the sky's fallen, they lost a game, yada, yada, yada. Well, we live in a different world now where the tournaments are play, and you're going to get another chance. It's heck, the 14 team lost Virginia Tech and still won the title. So,
yeah, no, there's no doubt the season's not over, but that was a tough one to swallow. We're going to go ahead and bring in our guest, Mark Givler from Buckeye Huddle, and get his thoughts, and we can all kind of throw the questions we've got to him as they come up. Let's see if we got him in. Mark, you hear us okay, buddy?
Yep. How you guys doing?
We're okay. We're okay. We were doing really, really good till the end of that game. I'm going to start off with a question for you here. Obviously, the offensive line was kind of a question mark the last 2 years. I think we've, decided. And last night, we got some runs. There was some plays where he had time, but, Simmons went out, and to me, everything kind of looked different. My question for you is, what do you know anything about the severity of his injury? I mean, they carted his ass off pretty quick, and that makes me nervous. And the rest of the offensive line, obviously, we had another starter go down. What's up with the injuries? Do you know anything about how severe they are? And what was your thoughts on the offensive line as a whole after we lost two guys?
Well, I'll start with the first part. Tegra Chabot is going to be fine. The right guard, he actually was able to come back into the game and give them some minutes. He's going to be fine. They got a bye week coming up, and I don't anticipate this will be anything that keeps him out of the lineup long term. Ryan Day had very ominous comments about Josh Simmons after the game, and it looks like he is possibly out for the year. That's the initial thought. I would think we'll know for sure here, if not by the end of the day, by Monday morning. So it didn't look good live the way his knee buckled, and Ryan Day seemed very concerned after the game. So every now and then you get some really unexpected positive news on things like this, and maybe it's just a sprain, but it doesn't sound good. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from the game. Actually, I think that's actually more concerning than the final score.
Contact injury like that is not good. I was watching the game with my brother, who's orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, that's go ahead, Steve.
No, I was going to say, it doesn't look good for him, unfortunately, and I hope we're wrong, but to your point, Mark, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one position where we couldn't really lose anybody. We're already pretty thin at left tackle. Mark, what did you think about the job they did, after Simmons went out? I mean, it didn't look to me like he had tons of time to throw, and the running game wasn't really as successful. Not that they really ran it that much after that, but what do you think the season looks like without Simmons at left tackle, and can they overcome that?
I think they can. I mean, they've got a lot of experience around the rest of the offensive line. Program. So it's not something that, you're necessarily plugging in some freshman or even a second-year player. I think they'll have enough experience there. While I didn't think the offensive line was particularly great in the second half, I will say this. If you had told me before the game that they were going to lose Simmons and they were going to lose Tegra in the first half, I would have thought the whole thing would have fallen to pieces, and it actually did. I thought they held up as well as could be expected given the situation, because it's always harder to lose guys mid-game. I mean, you didn't have a week to give someone starters reps. You literally are just flying by the seat of your pants at that point. And so I actually thought given the circumstances, I was actually a little bit pleasantly surprised that they held up as well as they did. But those were obviously big losses, especially Simmons.
Say Simmons is out for the rest of the year. What do they do? Do you really retool the line and put a guy like try to move Jackson over to play left tackle? And then, because what do you go? Michalski is the backup. I mean, you don't want to do Josh Fryer because that's like, trying to learn with your left hand when you're a right-handed person. I mean, what do you think?
The ideal situation is that Zen can just play left tackle, because then you're only disrupting. You're not really disrupting anybody by doing that. Obviously, Zen Michalski's got to figure things out there, and you got to hope he plays well. Yeah. But if you move somebody else, now you're basically disrupting two guys probably at that point. So I think the hope would be that Zen would just come in and be able to handle things. Like I say, he's 4th year in the program. Now we can talk about why he's in the 4th year in the program and hasn't really seen a lot of playing time. That's a valid question, but I think that's going to be the hope. And well-timed buy, in my opinion, right now, as the soul searching needs to happen there at a few spots, and as they try and figure out what their lineup's going to look like.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess I got a question for both Steve and Mark here. Where do we go now? I mean, this obviously we were talking right before we came on air, and if you would have told me that we were going to lose by 1 point, given how poorly some of the play was at times. I mean, I guess, Steve, I want to ask you first. What was your overall thoughts on the secondary? I mean, why were we having so much trouble letting guys get behind us in your mind? And what can they do anything to correct that? I mean, we haven't got torched like that all year, and I know they've got an experienced quarterback, but what was the problem in your eyes with the secondary?
I obviously haven't broken down film on Oregon, but I think they broke some tendency by throwing the ball deep to the wide side of the field. Typically with our defense, we do a good job of getting the ball out quick. And if you watch how the technique Kirk was playing, his eyes are in the backfield looking for the ball to come out probably quicker, because that's just historically we've been able to get pressure with 4 or 5 and the ball comes out. Now, this game, I think they broke some tendencies and got us, right? His eyes are in the backfield too much. And like I said, I don't know the exact play call, but when you're as a DB staring in the backfield, you can't. You're going to lose your receiver, right? And that's what happened for a couple times, unfortunately. So I don't know if they broke tendency and they schemed us really well, but the one thing that I think I'd like to see us do is, because we have such depth at every position. I mean, we saw it happen on the offensive line, right? We had a couple people get hurt, and we put new people in, and we were still able to keep going. Hey, if we're having a bad day, right? If Will Howard throws 3 picks, let's get him out. Let's put someone else in, and then get him back in once you settle down. I think Burke was. He's amped up, wanting to make plays and trying to do something, and it wasn't going well. Sometimes you got to sit him down, get him calm, and put the next guy in, because we have that fortunate, depth that we can do that. And we didn't do that last night, which is unfortunate. Listen, Denzel Burke is a hell of a football player, and we're not going to see this again. So if you start looking at a game like this, there's a lot of good to take away from it. If I'm going to lose a game, I'd rather lose a game like this than versus getting blown out. Right, there's a lot of good that we can take away from it, a lot of things that we can fix and get better, right? So, the areas where I think we got exposed, we can learn from and line up and keep playing. We have a hell of a football team. Like, I'm not worried one bit about where we're at. Like, Oregon's good. We went on the road. We had an instant classic, and unfortunately, we came out short by a point. Okay, let's learn from it and get ready for the next game.
No, I think that's a great point. I was wondering if they were going to maybe take him out for a couple plays and talk to him and put Matthews in, or, I kept waiting for that to happen. And it didn't seem like it really did. Some of the issues in the secondary always stem from pressure. If you got guys getting pressure, the DBs always look better. And, I've got to say, maybe there was about 2 plays where I saw JTT get in the backfield and cause some issues. But other than that, I forgot Sawyer was on the field. Mark, assess to me, if you can, the defensive ends and the pressure packages that I guess we didn't have last night. Why couldn't we get in, and cause issues for Gabriel when he was trying to throw it? I mean, I know he's getting rid of the ball fast, but shouldn't we have caused more problems in the backfield with our rush guys?
Yeah, I mean, the front four was obviously not getting home, and I think the front four played very well and really in any aspect last night. I thought Oregon ran the ball pretty well. I thought obviously they kept Dylan Gabriel really clean, but so I think just from a broad perspective, front four played very well, but here was kind of my issue. I ranted about this quite a bit last night. They're in man across the board in a lot of those situations where they got beat deep last night, and I don't think they did the secondary any favors by not bringing extra pressure. If you're going to go man, and look, we'll have to take a look at the all-22. It looked like they were in cover 0 there at the end of the first half. I have no idea why you'd be in cover 0 there on 3rd and long at the end of the half.
It is. That's how he calls it. He's been like that. He's consistent, right? He's always been like that.
But I've been critical of like situational awareness and like terms of like he did this against Georgia. They were in cover 0. They were in there was a play against Georgia, the deep ball where Ransom fell infamously, and like if you let Georgia go 10 plays, 75 yards, 5.5 minutes, you actually win that game. The one thing you couldn't afford to do was give up a 45-second touchdown drive. And so like the same thing applied here. But to me, if you're going to put your corners on an island like that, you need to supplement that with some extra pressure. And I don't think he brought extra pressure nearly enough. I thought you could probably count on one hand the number of times they brought extra pressure. You can actually like remember the plays they brought extra pressure because it actually worked most of the time when they brought an extra guy. So I didn't like, for lack of a better term, like the connectivity there between what they were doing in the secondary and what they were doing with their front. And so that to me was a little puzzling, especially when you have at that point in the game, once you get to like the end of the first half and your front four is clearly not getting pressure. Like you have to start finding other ways to get pressure. And I thought they came up short there on that aspect.
Yeah. Steve, what did you think about that? Did you think they should have possibly, blitzed more, sent somebody extra since neither Sawyer or JTT was getting home?
I mean, you got to pick a poison. The poison we picked didn't work, right? We were trying to lock it up in the back end and get pressure with 4. We couldn't. And so you're either all in or you're all out. I agree with Mark. If we're going to do it, let's bring more pressure and truly make those guys beat us to the outside with the ball coming out, knowing that it will get out quicker because we're bringing extra man, right? And that, unfortunately, I think we got Burke in trouble because we weren't bringing that extra pressure. He's got eyes in the backfield, and guys are running by him, right? So you got time to make those throws. But, yeah, I think, I don't think we were surprised on what we called defensively. I mean, that's what Coach Knowles has done for a while. And, they had a good game plan. Like, they game planned us. I think we got out coached. I hate to say that, but
yes,
our boys played well. They game planned us. And then at the end of the game, we got to call timeout, save some time there. We got to help ourselves. But other than that, I mean, I think we're going to be right.
Are you a little shocked? And this is to both of you guys. You look at the first drive, and we scored a touchdown on it. But especially with Jordan Birch out, weren't you expecting a lot of like, let's run it down their freaking throat. Let's get a nice long drive in, shut this crowd up, and just get a good tempo to the game. Instead, it was like a lot of passes. Like, I mean, I know the receivers had a height advantage quite a bit over Oregon's DBs, but I was shocked that we didn't try to run the ball more and try to set that tempo. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? Mark, Steve, either one.
I mean, here's my thought. I think the first drive, I think we did run the ball fairly well, right? We ran the ball 33 times. We averaged 4.5, carry. We'll take that. I think where we stalled the most and our offense didn't get a good tempo is we were bad on 3rd down, right? And you've heard me guys talk about this on the show. If you're going to be a championship team, you got to be able to establish a run, which I think we did pretty good. You got to be really efficient on 3rd down, and we weren't. And then you got to play good defense. And I mean, if we look at the game, that's the most yards we've given up all year. They were way more efficient on third down than we were. And that's where I think the game was really different. And that's a coaching scheme, right? And I think we didn't hit on some of our third down plays, which made that run game feel a little different, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have that many complaints about the offense last night, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought, once again, the defense didn't play well enough in a big game. That's, you know, and I think, you know, to an extent, yeah, could they have run the ball a little bit more? Maybe. You know, you lose 2 possessions basically with the turnover and then the onside kick, for lack of a better term, whatever that was. So Oregon steals 2 possessions. You still win the time of possession battle, despite that. I thought the short, quick passing game was kind of an extension of their running game. Oregon was going to let them 7 to 8 yards them to death in the passing game, and I thought they took advantage of that. I thought Howard, for the first 58 minutes and change, played basically the perfect game that they needed him to play. And you know, so I don't have a huge issue with really a lot of the things on offense, but you know, Steve, the one thing Steve did say, and which of course I agree with, is the third down efficiency had to be a little bit better. That would be my, you know, the third down efficiency, and then the 2-minute drill, which I think that goes just beyond the last play. There's a lot of things there that maybe scratch my head, but
yeah. What did you think about the offensive pass interference call? I mean, I guess that was offensive pass interference in textbook, I guess. I don't know. Mark, what did you think about that call? And I guess what did you think about it? I guess I don't know.
It's a tough call to make in that situation. I think Jeremiah's in a tough position there. You're obviously trying to get open. Guy's about to put hands on you. So what level of force is he allowed to use to ensure the guy who's trying to put hands on him doesn't disrupt his route? You know, he's obviously the bigger, stronger human there, so he gets a little bit of punishment for that, kind of like how Shaquille O'Neal used to be able to get fouled and hacked and people wouldn't call it because he's just bigger and stronger than everybody. I didn't love it. I'm not gonna sit here and say like there's no way that was. I mean, he pushed, he extended a little bit, he gave him a good chuck. I didn't love it. I didn't love it in the moment. I didn't love it in a game where they kind of let guys play for the most part. I mean, a lot of the penalties were just like false starts and things like that. There weren't a lot of like holdings, interference. There was only a couple of those, and they were like painfully obvious. So, you know, I didn't love it. Can I sit here and be like, oh, that's why they lost the game? I mean, I guess if you want to say that's why they lost the game, there's some truth to that, to the extent that they drove them out of field goal range, but they had so many other things they could have done right to win that game.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of that, Steve, there was a few times where I was like, why don't they just kick it now? Like, I mean, especially with 6 seconds left. I mean, a lot of times, unless you throw a quick out and they run right out of bounds, the clock's going to expire. I mean, even with the timeout, you can be screwed. I mean, what was your thought there? Would you rather have kicked it right there or call the timeout and set up what you're going to do in sequence? I don't know. What did you think, Steve?
Back on Mark's a little bit here. First of all, that call was horse shit. They can't make that call at that point of the game. The way they called the game, if they were calling it all game, I can live with it as a coach. But come on. I mean, to your point, we're going to penalize Jeremiah Smith because he's big and physical. Like, that just didn't sit right with me. But it is what it is. We can't say that we won or lost the game because of that play. So
right.
That is what it is. But, you know, the reality is I don't know the kicker well enough, but sending him out there to make a kick he can't make isn't a good way to win the game either, right? I mean, so we had to try to get more yardage there, unfortunately. And the thing that I'll go back to, and you know, like I said, Oregon gamed us. They knew throwing that 12th guy on there, the clock would run. We got to call that timeout. Stop the bleeding right then and there. Right? We were confused. We didn't know what was going on. Call your timeout. Right? At least give yourself a chance to get a play to where you're lined up and you know you're going to give it your best shot. And that wasn't it. So that to me was probably the more pivotal part. And it's hard, right? I know during the week they schedule and they practice different change situations. They'll do 2 minute. I don't know if you've ever practiced that scenario, right? That was a weird one. And kudos to Oregon for knowing the rule, and they use it against us. And I tip my hat, but I have a feeling from here on out we're going to know how to be ready for that in the future, because that's one thing at the end of the game you got to prep for, and it looked like we did, unfortunately. And I don't know how you could have predicted that.
I mean, at the end of the day, I know everybody's going to be upset about the loss, but let's be honest, Ohio State didn't lose to Vandy like Alabama did last week. Oregon is a legit program, and having this week off is probably going to help out quite a bit before going into Nebraska. I mean, Steve, you've gone through the weeks off. What goes through your mind on something like that before you go into your back in? I mean, because you can't really prep that long ahead of time for Nebraska.
Yeah, you get back to basics this week. Make sure everyone's healthy, right? Get everyone back in a good routine. Focus on yourselves, and then turn around the next week and get ready for Nebraska. I mean, this should be a really good self-scout week. Go back and look at your tendencies, self-scout what you've done well in offense, defense. How do you break those tendencies so you have a good game plan going into Nebraska?
Yeah, I mean, I do, as Mark said earlier, I think this is a really good time for a bye, with the offensive line banged up, and maybe just to not go out there after being shell-shocked like that at the end. I think that's good. Mark, I want to get your thoughts on, how you're viewing the Big Ten at this point. Obviously, we saw, Washington go up and take out our friends from up north, and then yesterday get shellacked by Iowa. That actually made me feel better, since we kicked the shit out of Iowa last week. Them coming back and stepping up was good. But how do you think the Big Ten looks to you, I guess, right now? And, after this game, how do you feel it stacks up?
Yeah, so I actually said before the game, this week I was asked, I was like, I think whatever happens in Eugene on Saturday night, they're going to play again in Indianapolis. And I certainly, I think that was validated by what we saw last night, that, I don't think anyone, it was not the cleanest game. Look, both sides made mistakes. If Ohio State goes and wins 34-32 with the last second field goal, all the stuff you guys are doing right now, we're doing right now, questioning, how could have Ohio State just done things different? Oregon's asking those same questions. How did we let them off the hook? This, that, and the other. So I think, but with that said, I think they were clearly two of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. I think anyone that watched that game can sit there and be like, yeah, there's a lot of talent on those rosters. There's a lot of speed. There's quarterbacks were good. Like, I think that's pretty obvious. And so Ohio State's got the 2 hurdles to getting their rematch on their schedule. Indiana, which God, they're doing a great job, but I can't fathom that's going to be a loss. And then you go at Penn State, and certainly a losable game. I don't think Penn State's skill on the perimeter strikes fear in anyone's heart the way Oregon's does. So I think it's a good matchup for Ohio State. But it's one of those things where, like we talked about it last night, is like any goal Ohio State had before the game kicked off last night is still not only in play, but it's actually in their control.
Yeah. And Steve, I know you got to bounce.
At Penn State.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How you feeling after watching Penn State? I know, Steve, you got to bounce, so I just want to get your thoughts before you leave. I'm still, Penn State isn't the team that really scares me after their victory yesterday and them still being undefeated. How do you think the Buckeyes match up against them?
I think we match up against anyone in the country, point blank, period. I think Penn State's a really good football team, and that's a huge win for them, going on the road, right, out west, winning against a good football team. But Penn State will take their shots, and they do some unique things on offense, which I like. They're very creative, and they're going to do that. I think the game we just had is going to help us prepare and be ready for a game like that at Penn State, right? Talk about loud environments. I don't think there's a louder one. I mean, I know I wasn't out there, but I would imagine Penn State, when they do their whiteout at night, is as loud as anywhere in the country and you're ever going to find. So having that experience now under our belt against Oregon, where we came out with a lot of good, I think we match up really well with Penn State, and we're set to kind of, to our point, it's in their hands now to run the table to still accomplish every single goal they want.
Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you, man. I know you got to bounce, so thank you so much for jumping on to give us your thoughts on the game last night, brother.
You got it, man. Have a good one, guys.
All right, we'll see you.
Talk to you.
All right, go get him. All right, so I guess before we let you go, Mark, I want to get your thoughts on the next game. I'm going to be up there checking this thing out in person. Hopefully I get to run into all you guys, but I do want to know, you've seen Nebraska, I'm sure, and their freshman quarterback, and obviously they're a little bit different the way they operate with Matt Rule being the coach now. What do you think about this Nebraska team, and how do we match up with them?
Yeah, like I think Ohio State matches up really well with pretty much anybody left on the schedule. I really like Matt Rule. I think he's a really good coach. I was a big fan of that hire for them. I think they're probably a year away from being legitimate, conference championship game type of contenders. But he's creative on offense. He's got Dylan playing well within the offense. You're not seeing a lot of errant throws, bad decisions. I think he's coached Dylan up really well. I think they've got some weapons now. They got the tight end Thomas Fedone, who's been like ravaged by injuries after being the number one tight end in the country coming out of high school. As a guy I thought was gonna be a star and just tore up his knee, and he's just had all sorts of issues. And he's really come on. They've got some young skill guys that are really good. The defense, I'm sure they'd like to have one or two moments back this season, but I think the defense has been pretty sound. I just think it's a well-coached team. It's a team that, from a ceiling perspective, even if they play their A game, I think it's gonna be tough for them to kind of come into Columbus and win. But it's also a team that's not going to give you the game. You're going to have to go take it. They're not going to just donk the game away. So they're going to make you earn it. And I think that's going to be the key, is just like staying disciplined and knowing that like you're playing a well-coached team. They're not going to hand it to you.
Awesome. Mark, and thank you so much for joining us. Everybody make sure go check out all of Mark's reports at Buckeye Huddle and subscribe and get updated. I know I do. That's where I get most of my news from. So everybody make sure and sign up at Buckeye Huddle and subscribe and catch all of Mark's great stuff. Thank you so much for jumping on with us this morning. I know you're super busy, so thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time and helping us break down the loss.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right, buddy. Have a good one, and thank you so much, Mark. All right, that was Mark Givler from Buckeye Huddle. We got a pretty good breakdown of the game last night. I don't know what else we can say about it. It was disappointing, obviously, to lose, but as everybody said, that was a pretty good showing on the road against the number 2, 3, whatever the hell you want to call them, team in the country. We'll hopefully bounce back from that, but we're going to get to the rest of the slate of games right after this.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
All right, everybody make sure to go to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code NSS for National Streaming Sports. Get $20 off your next purchase. That's our gift to you for watching us this morning and looking at our ugly faces. We're going to set you up and give you $20 off on your next purchase of your game. Hell, get your tickets to go to the Buckeyes versus Nebraska. Save $20 and come up and see me next week in Columbus, because we're going to be up there doing some live shit for that game, and hopefully the end will be better. You mentioned at least we didn't lose to Vandy, James, and Bama nearly lost again yesterday. I mean, they had a hard time with South Carolina, and I did not expect that. I figured they'd come out pissed off. They looked mad at the end of the Vanderbilt game as they're fighting, throwing mouthpieces, kicking the ball. I was like, oh, they didn't show this fight during the game, but they look pretty pissed right now. And then they come out against South Carolina and honestly got pushed around, for most of the game. What were your thoughts on Bama's bounce back win after losing to Vandy last week?
Uninspiring, troubling. Anything other than positive. I think there's a lot of guys in their locker room thinking that the A on their helmet just gives them a 20-point lead. And now everybody sees chinks in the armor. And because let's be honest, if South Carolina beat them yesterday, we'd have to have a real conversation. Would they even make the playoff? And did you ever think that would happen in the first year after Saban left? I didn't.
No, not with this. Not with this roster. I mean, they didn't really lose that many guys. They lost, their center who went to Ohio State. They lost their safety, Caleb Downs. They had a little shuffling in the wide receiver group, but hell, they got Ryan Williams, so their wide receiver group went up, and I did not expect them to be struggling to get into the playoff. And I guess my question to you is it more just coaching? Is it just Nick Saban being gone? Are they not as talented? Has everybody else caught up? I've heard a lot of people talking the last couple of weeks about how, with the NIL, with the transfer portal, the haves are getting closer to the have-nots, because these kids that used to be sitting on Bama's roster and waiting for a chance to play, or sitting on the Ohio State roster waiting to get in, can transfer at any moment and go play elsewhere. Is that what we're seeing here, or is Bama just sucked this year?
Bama just hasn't looked good. Honestly, since the first half of the Georgia game, that second half of the Georgia game, they hung on, except for that one Ryan Williams catch. Then you saw the Vanderbilt game. It's not like Vanderbilt was lucky to win that game. Vanderbilt won that game.
Yeah.
And South Carolina really should have pulled this one off. They make that field goal down the stretch. There's like little things that they didn't do. Because, you're playing in Bama. It's not an easy place to play.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I thought they would be rolling over South Carolina, was because they got their asses kicked last week from Vanderbilt Commodores. Then they were coming back home to play in Tuscaloosa against the South Carolina team, who's not terrible, but South Carolina doesn't scare me. But I have to give Coach Beamer some credit. First off, he held Ryan Williams to 4 catches for 32 yards. Mm-hmm. That is a win in my book. Yep. And secondly, he held the entire Alabama team to 38 carries for 104 rushing yards. That's 2.7 per carry.
Uh-huh.
Why can Alabama not run the damn ball like we've seen in the past? We've seen it before where they struggle, then they just start handing it off. And, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Brian Robinson Jr. I could name about Josh Jacobs. I could go through a list of about 25 running backs that could run your ass over at any given moment. I don't see that guy in this roster. Why can they not run the ball like they normally do?
Well, in all honesty, you look at 38 carries, 18 of them came from Jalen Milroe. Do you want a quarterback running the ball 18 times? Not
him.
Yeah. We were, at one point we were talking Heisman Trophy candidate. I don't care who you are. If you lose your Heisman Trophy candidate, unless you've got like Arch Manning, like they do in Texas, there's going to be a huge drop off. And
he's the one guy that can't lose.
Yeah, they can't lose him. They just can't. And I do not understand their play calling, their execution. They just don't look as crisp as they've done in the past, especially in the line of scrimmage. They make a lot of dumb mistakes. A lot. Missing blocks. Just, it's weird. It's so mean, granted, Nick Saban's not there anymore. We knew this was going to happen. Same thing happened after Paul Bear Bryant left. I mean, do people remember the names of who coached there? I do, but
Yeah, I do, but the casual fan probably doesn't. I remember a guy named Gene Stallings. I remember him, and then I remember
he won a natty there.
yeah, he did. But they went through some clowns. There's no doubt about it. Probably the best one was the guy that never even got to be the coach because
Mike Price.
Yeah, because
he was undefeated. Mike Price was undefeated at Alabama. Come on.
He did get to use their credit card to buy hookers, so good for Mike. You know, at least he got to get some perks from the job. But yeah, no, I guess I'm pretty confused because this team last year, pretty much the exact same team, you know, went to the 14 playoff, had a chance to win, you know, play for the national championship in that Michigan game, and you know, got stopped on 4th down. But it doesn't look like the same team, and you know. It's real easy to just blame Kalen DeBoer, and I guess that's what we'll do. But I'm interested to see what they look like, you know, in their next contest because they've got to get better quick because they've got some tough ones coming up. You know, I mean, their season's not over by any stretch. Let's talk about the number 1 ranked team for a moment, if we can, because the Texas Longhorns are ranked numero uno. They, unlike Alabama, could lose their quarterback and still keep rolling, as we've seen with Quinn Ewers getting dinged up and their replacement, Arch Manning. How many teams have 2 5-star quarterbacks who could start anywhere on their roster at one time? Not many.
Yeah.
But they do. And yesterday, you know, they brought Quinn back. So my question to you is, A, do you think that was a good move, putting Quinn back in? And B, what did you think about their game yesterday in the Red River? I still call it the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma.
The rivalry, yeah. Honestly, yeah, I would have put Ewers in. I mean, I think that was more from a standpoint of keeping your locker room at ease. Just since he's been there for so long, to, you know, if you go down, you still were playing well, keep him back in, because it's not like Texas was playing against world beaters. I mean, when he was out, but they just manhandled Oklahoma in every which way, shape, or form. And let's be honest, going into this game, a lot of things had to go Oklahoma's way to win it. I mean, they had what? Their top 5 receivers were out. Top 5. Name me a team in the country not named Ohio State that your top 5 receivers are out and you could still potentially win the game.
No, nobody. Yeah.
I mean, I'm honestly shocked that Texas didn't win by more. I thought they would have dropped the freaking 60 spot on them.
Well, they had I mean, I'm giving them like a C+, B- performance from their offense. Yeah. If you can go C+, B- and still put up, you know, 34 and win 34-3, that's pretty good. But I mean, Oklahoma's just hurting right now. I mean, they've gone with Hawkins at quarterback because their offensive line it can't protect. So they got a more mobile guy back out there. But last night, you know, they couldn't run the football. Hawkins ran the ball 20 times. I don't know if that was more, you know, called runs or it seemed to me more running for his life.
Yeah.
But, you know, Oklahoma's in a world of shit right now because they're just, their offense is not good. And the defense has been on the field so long over the last 3 or 4 weeks that I think they're a little run down. And that's kind of what it looked like to me.
How are they ranked 18th? Like, I mean, that's the one thing that just shocks me is I look at this team and I'm like, as many problems as they have, and they still put them 18. If this was named like Wyoming, you and I both know they wouldn't be ranked 18th. But it's
because they're Oklahoma. It's because they're Oklahoma. I mean, we know that. We know they're a blue blood program, and they've been, you know, in the top 20 teams for 100 years. So they just kind of put them there because you have to put someone there. But their resume doesn't show me. I mean, I don't know who put their schedule together, but it's like, thanks. Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss. And then they play, they've got an easy one, and then they play Missouri, Bama, and LSU. I expect Oklahoma to win 2 more games, maybe. Okay? They might beat South Carolina. They may not. And then I think they play Maine or somebody. I don't even know who that is, but they have a squeaker. So they're going to win one and maybe two. But other than that, I don't see them having much success the rest of the season. And that Tennessee game broke them. Let's just be honest. They got so many guys banged up in that game. They still have not recovered. Yeah. And I don't know if they're going to. Let's talk about another team that's hurting right now, and that would be the men of Troy. Wow. I mean, they had this game in control, James. They were dominating this game in every facet. Especially if you go towards halftime. I mean, I was just like, wow, this game's over. I don't even want to watch it anymore because USC was just in control. And then the second half occurred, and things got weird. And Penn State started playing. Drew Aller, stepped up a little bit, obviously, in the second half, but this guy still is pretty mistake prone in my mind. But I have to give a lot of credit to Tyler Warren. I mean, this guy, 17 catches, 224 yards. He also threw a pass. He ran the ball. This guy, we were talking at the beginning of the year, like, who scares you on Penn State's offense? And we were kind of like, nobody. Well, this guy scares me a little bit. And Tyler Warren, he had a pretty good game, but I think this is more of USC imploding than Penn State blowing up. What did you think about this one?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, you look at the last three games. I mean, a lot of USC's games, they're a team of two halves. Like, you look at Wisconsin when they played Wisconsin 4 weeks ago. Wisconsin was beating them at the half, like 21-10, and USC went on a run. Against against Michigan, they were up. Against us, they were up. Like, the second half, one of the two halves, they're not playing well. And quite frankly, I keep going back to their line of scrimmage play. Their line of scrimmage play, I mean, they've got fantastic guys at their specialty players, especially at receiver and running back. Marks and their receivers are really, really good. But their line of scrimmage play is sometimes horseshit, and it gets exposed really quick. And you play a team like Penn State, man, they're going to, you're in for a fist fight. And that's the one thing that I don't think USC was ready for. And we talked about that. And this has been a Lincoln Riley problem dating back to his time in Oklahoma, where they weren't strong enough on the line of scrimmage to play that. And especially in the Big Ten, you got to be able to freaking, play that type of game.
Yeah. And this is an issue here. We're talking about a guy who makes $12 million a year. Last year, they had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and went 7-5 and could have lost two other games that one was in double overtime and another one, was the last second victory. So, they were lucky to be 7-5 last year. Now they sit at 3-3. I guess, they look like they're probably going to get bowl eligible because they play Maryland, Rutgers, Washington, Nebraska, UCLA, and Notre Dame. But I've got to be honest, this guy seems to me to be the most overpaid coach in college football. Am I crazy thinking that?
No, I think you're pretty spot on.
I mean,
$12
million bucks. That's a lot of cash for someone who can barely get to a bowl game.
Yeah, remember their previous head coach, left to go to Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he was winning more games than this guy.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. Why? Do you think that the heat on his ass starts to warm up after this loss? Because, this is every game. They lost to Minnesota the week before. They, came back and won against Wisconsin, luckily, the week before that. And then they lost to Michigan. They lost 3 of their last 4 games and were down, against Wisconsin in between there. So, I don't know. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And I think they're in trouble.
Yeah. I've been saying, I mean, hell, my far out there prediction was that USC wouldn't even make a bowl game this year.
Yeah.
And I know people thought I was crazy, but I'm like, they got a tough schedule, plus their line of scrimmage play is not the strongest. Until they get that figured out. But I will say they got, teams that have to have that 2-hour advantage. I mean, Penn State, Minnesota were the first ones to actually make the trip out, or besides Indiana, and win. Otherwise the 2-hour time change has been always in favor of the home team.
Yeah. Well, we're going to break down one more game in depth. We'll talk a little bit about Florida, Tennessee, and then we're going to break down Ole Miss and LSU right after this.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us Opportunities webpage, for a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits. Must be 21 years old, and remember, bet responsibly.
All right, we are back. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate and James Bonneville. We had some great guests earlier today. Our special co-host, the quarterback Steve Bellisari, joined us. We had Mark Givler from Buckeye Huddle to break down the number 2 versus number 3 matchup of Ohio State versus Oregon. We have since touched on a number of other games, but we've got to discuss Happy Valley last night. Death Valley last night, excuse me, not Happy Valley, Death Valley last night, where LSU took care of business against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is now 5-2. We were talking about how this was Lane Kiffin's best team he's ever had in the Grove on paper, and now they've dropped, 2 out of the last 3 games. Was this an elimination game last night, James, for the Rebels?
From what? The playoff or the SEC title?
Both.
SEC title, yes. Playoff, no.
Really?
I still think they've got a shot to backdoor their way in. But they can't afford to lose from now on out. I mean, can they do it? That game at home against Georgia is going to be pretty big. But they need that they need that style point win on their, because I mean, who's their best win on their schedule right now? South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean every time they played somebody good, they've lost. They beat Furman, they beat MTSU, they beat Wake Forest, they beat Georgia Southern, then they lost to Kentucky, they beat South Carolina, and then they lost to LSU. So their schedule to me looks like absolute garbage as far as the wins they have.
The Furman Paladins are a solid program here now. Come on. I mean,
well, they are in their conference, but they're a FCS team, and they beat them 76-0. So that I delete that game out of the picture. MTSU, that means nothing to me. Wake Forest is god awful. Georgia Southern is no good. So the only win they have with any credibility at all is South Carolina. And so their toughest part of their schedule is coming up. They play Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, to end the season. And then obviously Mississippi State, who doesn't scare me at all. But I don't know if they win any of those games. I think this was an elimination game for them, because to me, they're not going to win out. I mean, there's no way. They're not going to beat Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida with no problems. And speaking of Florida, last night, they played pretty well. I mean, they seem to be the kryptonite to the Superman of Tennessee. But you got to give the Vols some credit for coming back and winning that game against a team that's kind of had their number What did you think about the Tennessee game and Florida succumbing to the Vols in overtime?
Well, I just keep coming back to the defense of Tennessee. I mean, that's really the namesake. Everybody wants to look at Nico and this offense, especially after the first 3 games. But honestly, it's this defense that makes this team tick. Samson had a good game too as well. 112 on the ground, 3 touchdowns. But I mean, quite frankly, both sides had 2 turnovers. They just didn't play a clean game overall. You expect that from Florida. You don't expect that from a Tennessee, the 8th ranked team in the country.
Yeah, the biggest issue I have with the Vols right now is if Dylan Sampson were to get hurt,
yeah, they're in trouble.
Team would be screwed.
Yeah,
because he's their whole offense right now, brother. He had 27 for 112. He had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
I mean, you take Dylan Sampson off this roster, and I would be concerned about the Vols. So that's probably my biggest issue with Tennessee right now is, they rely heavily on Dylan Sampson because he's been great and he's been impossible to stop. And that's great, but we know how running backs, can come and go as far as injuries are concerned. So that kind of concerns me there. But a big win for them, just being able to get over the hurdle that is, Florida. That's just been kind of a problem for them over the past 100 years.
It's rivalry games, man. Rivalry games, crazy crap can happen. That's the one thing you just got to throw records out and let it roll. So, do I still think Florida's a good team? No. Graham Mertz is their freaking quarterback. You got an issue when Graham Mertz is your starting quarterback.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. Let's talk a little bit about next week. Obviously, the highlight game's got to be Bama, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know. Michigan is playing Illinois. How is Michigan still ranked is a question I've got for you.
Well, I think not playing this week. Well, they struggled against bye. They couldn't put any points up against bye, which is, not shocking with that offense. So, honestly, it's. I think a lot of this is going to have to be hangover games. Purdue's got to fly out to. Oregon's got to fly out to Purdue. And if you've ever played at West Lafayette, that's not an easy place to play because it's the opposite of loud. It's quiet. And there's just a lot of weird games. Nebraska at Indiana, if Cignetti wins that game, I have a hard time seeing him not become Big Ten Coach of the Year.
If he beats Nebraska next week, they should build a statue of his ass outside the stadium. Seriously, when's the last time Iowa went 7-0? Indiana went 7-0 in football.
Yeah.
I don't recall it. But I definitely think Alabama and Tennessee is probably one of the bigger games next week. And then obviously Georgia, Texas. Who you got, Georgia, Texas?
I'm taking Texas. I think Georgia is imploding right now, especially, they struggled against Mississippi State. I didn't watch the game, but when you saw 31 points they put up and then Kirby pushes the quarterback when he ran out of bounds.
Yeah, that was not a good look, bro. I saw that, and I meant to bring that up earlier, but that was not a good look. How is that cool? If Ryan Day did that, it would be the front page of the newspaper, but Kirby does it. Nobody cares. It's like, Ryan Day loses a few games against Michigan in a row, and he's the worst coach in the world. Kirby's 1-6 against Bama, and nobody says shit. So I don't really get that. I didn't understand him shoving the quarterback, but I can tell you this, those Georgia fans are not going to be happy if they drop another one next week to Texas, and I'm taking Texas just because I'm looking.
Texas.
I'm taking Texas.
Think about it. During the week when you hear Georgia being brought up, what's the first thing you think of? Somebody just got arrested again. It seems like their freaking arrest record is like bigger than their freaking regular season record. It's not like it's like parking fines or speeding. It's like beating the crap out of their girlfriend or wife
or their kids or other people's kids. It's not a good look right now. And you know what covers a lot of that up is winning.
Yeah.
But if you start losing and you're having those problems, that is when things get rough, because these people in charge will look the other way if you are winning the games. But we are out of time. We will be back next week. We will talk Bama and Tennessee. We will talk Georgia and Texas. And make sure to go to SeatGeek.com, enter in the code NSS, and get $20 off your next purchase. As I said, our gift to you. James, keep them up. I will talk to you again real soon. Okay, buddy?
All right, man.
Keep them up, and hope you're feeling better.
All right. We'll see you then. Later.
Peace.